The following presentation was recorded live at the Richmond Marriott in Richmond, Virginia for the 29th Annual International Association of Square Dance Callers Convention. This is tape number 30, Talk the Talk.
How many of you think words are important? Can you give me an example of...
Are we turned on and going now? We're turned on and going. Jim, we're going to talk on this microphone because we want everything to get on the tape. And Jim's the moderator. This is Mr. Jim Hensley from Creative Marketing Services. You guys, give him a hand. What the heck? It's right after lunch. Get your blood moving a little bit. Jim will introduce the panel members, and then we'll get on. Make sure that everything that's said in this session gets on the microphone, so that microphone or that tape that people purchase in this doesn't have these long pauses, and you're driving in your car and you're thinking, okay, come on, get on, let's talk in here.
Okay, I'll talk in the mic. It is critically important that you do understand that words as a result of your thoughts are really what make you what you are and how you act. And this is a basic concept of the most basic psychology there is. The reality is not in this table, but in the thought of the man who thought about having a thing called this table. And that's the real reality, in fact. And when he put that reality into a word and said, I think I'll make a table, it happened. But the real reality is in the words. So that's the basis of what we're talking about here, as I understand it. Is that right? Mike squared? This is Mike squared up here. And this is certainly something new to you. I just want to say a few words, and then these guys are going to give you the bulk of it because they basically are the callers, and they know what we're talking about. I'm giving you simply from a overview perspective of what these baby boomers think about words, because that's your marketplace. There's 100 million people between the boomers and the Xers moving through this population base. And they're the people. And by the way, these people are interested in the same thing you are. You might be surprised to know, or maybe some of you have been in other sessions, but the fastest growing area in the whole multi-billion dollar healthcare, health spa, fitness business is 55 years and over. You see these commercials they run, and you see these nice 25-year-old hard bodies who look like they never needed to go into a fitness center in their lives. And you think that's what the fitness center business is about, but 28% of these people in these centers now, and that's doubled in the last 5 years, are 55 years and over. So we do have a market. But maybe if they're going to healthcare centers, they're trying to tell us something. These boomers now, they're the top 10% are 55 and between 50 and 55. They're discovered mortality. They're worrying about their health. So maybe we may also have to think in terms of our being able to see the word health, fitness, as another descriptive word for square dance. It must not, in my opinion, you must not be bothered by the Weight Watchers coming to me and saying, can you give me a video, a little dance exercise thing that I can do that looks like it's proprietary to Weight Watchers? Because my Weight Watcher groups wants to come in their sweats and do a fast count tempo dance routine so they can lose weight. Now, if that bothers you as a new idea of seeing square dancing in a different way, then maybe you need to be able to change your perception on this, because it shouldn't. Because once they get in there, not thinking it's square dancing necessarily, but an exercise, and then somebody says, well, those are square dance moves. Yeah, I used to do this when I was in the 6th grade. We did that. Yeah, a fundraiser a couple of years ago at the church. But by seeing it this way, it doesn't carry any of the negative or it doesn't carry any of the false or wrong concept, image, because now it's an exercise, and they want an exercise, and they're losing weight and doing it. All of this is simply an example of getting you to understand that you need to think outside the box in the sense of how you present this to these boomers, because these are people who, in the early 70s, had a mindset when they came of age of not wanting to take lessons. The word lessons, we're talking about words, just drives them crazy. And the word commitment drives them crazy. And in groups and trust and this kind of stuff. And they have not changed that mindset in 30 years. And I have a couple examples of proof of it. We won't go into it now because I want these guys to take it. But words are important. The word lesson is a no-no. Mike's going to say something about this, I'm sure. But as callers, you know this anyway. You've all had to stay clear of certain words. You've all had to use other words as well as the attitudes. These words are important. Go ahead, guys.
Before we go too much further, let's introduce, I'm sure most of you know this next gentleman, but he's out of Omaha, Nebraska, been calling 26 years, and he's also our vice chairman of our marketing committee with some great experience in the marketing area, and that's Mr. Mike Hogan. So, Mike?
Thanks. Yeah, I think I'll use that one, actually. If you guys make sure if you do have questions, use the mic so that we can get it, okay? Dad will give you the mic. Yeah, what I wanted to start with really, my background in marketing is really in radio. That's where I've worked for, 12 years, I believe. I actually come out of a business background, but I've been in the marketing side of it for about 3 years. I have a whole lot to learn. But I know that the thing that we deal with in radio is the message. Okay? There's a lot of things, we talk in radio that if you put on a commercial that the next 10 people that come through my business door, I'm going to give $100 to. You only need to say that message one time, people show up. It's very compelling. What we're dealing with in square dancing today is a lot of it is an image problem that we have. We've done a lot of research. We found out that we all drive RVs and we have big belt buckles and we have big hair and we have crinoline petticoats, and that might not be something that the non-dancing public is extremely excited about. Not to say that that's a bad thing, and that's not to say that we don't do that. But what we want to do is, as we're trying to recruit new dancers, is we want to say things. Basically, when we're trying to recruit, we're selling. Okay, we're trying to take people who either have the wrong idea of what our activity is or don't even know what it's about, and we're trying to make sure that they understand what it's about and communicate it to them in terms of things that they want. Because just as Jim was talking about a second ago, a lot of the boomers, Xers, and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, I think. I'm kind of on the borderline. A lot of the boomers are really looking for something that's got good physical and mental exercise for them to keep them healthy. If you don't look at our activity, as he said, as a health type of activity, maybe we should, because this is something that those people are looking for, and we certainly can give that to them. We just need to tell them that. They don't want to talk about lessons. They want to talk about a party. I want to read something to you. This says square dancing is a party every time you do it. Square dancing brings people together for fun and fellowship, even when learning how. The fun starts right at the very first night. You meet new people and make new friends, and the fun keeps right on going as long as you do. That's pretty good words, okay? That's pretty compelling. I don't know if you guys recognize this, but this particular document has got a lot of that kind of thing, and I intentionally folded it backwards. It happens to be the new song and dance routine that CALLERLAB has put out and distributed something like 150,000 of these. Okay, is it perfect? I don't know, but it's very, very close to it. I might have chosen a few different photos in it, maybe, but the verbiage in here is fantastic. In calling, we steal each other's choreography all day long. Okay? Go ahead and plagiarize, guys. Look at this stuff and find the stuff that's really good and use some of these words in what you're doing. Now, what I'm going to talk about primarily is not one-on-one. Mike Seastrom is going to talk about one-on-one when you're talking to individuals to try and recruit them into the activity. And that is clearly the best way, is one-on-one. But I want to talk to you about what you say in other forms of media. And I'm going to use radio as an example. We talked about selling, that what we're doing is we're finding out what it is that we have that prospective dancer wants. So I want to start out with, when we do selling, we talk about the benefits. What are the benefits for you? So I want to start out by, if you guys would be kind enough, even though I'm not going to get the mic to all of you because they'll be very quick answers, so I'll repeat them on the microphone. I'd like you to if you would, list for me the benefits that we have of square dancing. Okay? What kind of benefits does somebody get? Lanny, I don't know if everybody will get it that quick. Anybody? Health. Exercise. Social. Keep going. Mental health. Mental exercise. Anybody else? Follow directions. Time with their partner. That's sort of tied into social, but it's very specific, isn't it? New friends. Stress relief. Family recreation. Mental stimulation. There's a lot. Okay. Family. By the way, all of this is going on the tape. I can't write it as fast as you're giving it to me. Okay? So make sure you get one of the tapes if you like. If you're not writing these down. I listed a few. By the way, nobody mentioned fun. Is it? To the people that don't square dance? Entertainment. I listed fun, good physical exercise, good mental exercise, social. I mentioned affordable. I don't know that that's something we really need to talk about. I don't think dollars are an issue. Entertaining, wholesome. Those are all benefits. So now what you got to do is when you're going out with your class or with your club, and you're trying to recruit people for your next dance class, okay, figure out who you're going to go after. Because there's all kinds of different groups. You can go after young. Okay, if you have youth groups in your area, you can go after the youth. The youth doesn't care that it's good physical exercise. So that's probably not something that you're going to talk about. You can go after young adults. You can go after middle-aged adults. You can go after singles. You can go after couples. You can go after... I think in a lot of conversations today we've decided that couples that are at that point where their children are just getting out of high school and suddenly they're empty nesters for the first time are a great target area. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you talk about the things that are good for them. I am 39 years old. I said that on tape, didn't I? and I have two young children. Oh, well, 11 and 8. That's not terribly young, but if I were not a square dancer, you probably aren't going to get me into your activity unless you have an avenue for my kids to be involved. Okay? But if you have that and you've decided to go after me, wouldn't you want to say that? Okay? We miss out on some of that stuff. So the message that you convey has to be about what the listener, I use listener because of radio, but the listener, the reader, the person who sees it in a magazine, sees your print ad, sees your flyer at the grocery store, figure out where you're going to go to recruit these people, and then who those people are, who that target is, and what they want. Put things in terms of things that benefit for them. If you do that, you'll have more success. I put together it's really not a perfect radio spot because it's about 75 seconds long. But one of the things that I'm actually jumping the gun on something that Mike started, so I'm going to steal some of your material. In Mike's handout, you probably have it there. I think it says something to the effect of use words that describe things that make them feel good. And he starts with, listen, there's music in the air. Can you hear it? Can you feel it? All of that. And I took that and I moved it along. And what I tried to incorporate in this was the idea of, seeing the smiling faces, that it's a lot of fun. That's verbiage that if you read it or if you hear it, okay, you can close your eyes and you can see these activities going on and you can feel good about them. We're dealing with issues like dress code. So I wanted to touch on that you know what? Today's square dancing, the dress code is a little different than it used to be. I'm not saying that the crinoline petticoat went away. I'm just saying open up your mind if you're not a square dancer and listen to it, because we have changed. The music is modern. The dress is modern. The social aspects. So if you would, actually I'm going to have you unplug one of those two. Yeah, one of those mics. That'd probably be me. Go ahead. There you go. And I'm gonna play this for you, and just listen to it. In fact, if you want, close your eyes and listen to it and see if you can visualize some of this. Listen, there's music in the air. Can you hear it? Listen to the beat. Can you feel it? There's a shuffling of feet and a whisper of moving skirts. See the smiling faces, the laughter, and the fun? What is it? It's square dancing. It's the same old dance, but yet it's not. The beat is strong and the music is hot. Can you hear it? The excitement it builds as the dancers go on. Can you feel it? Can you see the smiling faces, the laughter, and the fun? What is it? It's square dancing. It's you, it's your friends, it's your family, it's fun, it's back again and it's cool. But it's not like the dance you did back in school. Today's square dance is modern in music and dress. It's an old tradition with a new twist. It's healthy in body and healthy in mind. It's a challenge yet simple, for a day or a lifetime. Hear the music, feel the beat, hear the laughter, the fun, and the shuffling feet. It's a new song and dance, modern in sound. It's today's square dance, and it's coming to your town. Join in for an evening of fun this Thursday or any Thursday in April, 8 p.m. at Rockbrook Methodist Church, 99th and West Center Road in Omaha. That's any Thursday in April at Rockbrook Methodist Church. For more information, call 592-1460. It's modern Western square dancing. It's a new song and dance routine. Can you hear it? Can you feel it? Can you see it? Yes. Having worked at a radio studio, I have access to some of that sort of thing. But the point here is that I covered probably a lot more than you would normally, but I wanted to touch on some of those things. The idea that it's very family, or it's friendly oriented. The idea that the dress code is softened somewhat. That we have, the music that I used is Hazel May. Thank you. That's on Sting. And it's very solid dancing beat, but certainly not. In fact, I had 3 different people in the studio when we cut this spot that heard the music and said, "That's square dance music?" So you use those kind of things. Do the same thing in your flyers. Now, on your flyers, you can't put nearly this many words on them. Of course not. So figure out where you're going to distribute those flyers and who the people are that are likely to see it. And as long as you know the age group and some basics about who they are, socioeconomical information, whatever you need, put the words on there that are things that they want. Okay? You had a question, Chris?
What type of feedback did you get on your commercial?
I just cut it. I've never used it.
One, two. Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Mike?
Hi, out of Thousand Oaks, California, just north of Los Angeles. It's how many of you, just as a show of hands, have thought about what Mike just said and the words you use, and actually thought about targeting the audience for your class? It's interesting that we just put out these generic flyers, we put out these generic commercials, we have these silhouette figure dancers on our flyers, and some of that stuff, is it positive, is it negative, we don't test market our stuff, and so it's consequently, I think a lot of us over the last 20 years have done these great projects. We think, this ought to do them, with the door hangers or a commercial someplace, and actually nobody shows up. And we've had people put up billboards, just associations save money and put in big things into these billboards that they put up all over town, and nobody shows up. They didn't test market. They didn't think about their message. They didn't think about some of the things, exactly the things that Mike talked about here. Who are they targeting? We need to think about that. We need to have that message out there. It's a different world out there, and these people are used to getting sophisticated pieces of material in the mail. They're used to getting commercials that are sophisticated. They're used to getting commercials or seeing commercials on television that are certainly targeted towards specific groups. Have you ever seen a car commercial with a gal and her kids, and they're getting in the van, and they're trying to sell that van to that young mother out there someplace. It's a targeted audience, and we need to think about that in our advertisement. And I think it's a point that we really need to shift gears a little bit on this. We need to think about some of these old figurines and some of our old square dance art, and think, is that a positive thing? Or is that a negative thing? I know I was driving into town. I was doing a festival in St. George. I was driving up from Vegas, and coming into town, there was these big silhouettes of square dancers, along the highway there. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, it just didn't look very modern. It was like an old message and going into an old town, and it just said something to me that this doesn't seem like a current thing. It seems like an old time traditional weekend they're going to have in this town, and so. We need to think about that, and if we do come up with a new figure, we do come up with some new art, we need to think about test marketing it and doing this how it's actually done on a regular with regular market research people and the right people, so that we know that this stuff works. On my focus on this particular panel, I was talking specifically about one-on-one communication. And as I looked back, because we talked about this a while back, and as I looked into some of our existing documents, one of the things I came across, because USDA has material that is for recruiting, CALLERLAB has some material that's for recruiting, Legacy has material, American Square Dance Magazine has material for recruiting. And I found one place that mentioned that as a group or as a club, we need to think about getting something into our dancers' hands. If our dancers are in fact our primary recruiters, we need to think about getting something in their hand that gives them the information to personally recruit someone else on a one-on-one basis. I mean, these are our primary recruiters. We're asking our club members to go out and get your friends, but we're not telling them how, and we're not giving them the message and the words to use at the same thing. Or at the same time. And I've only seen, like I said, I saw this mentioned once. I looked around for a document like this, and in one publication, I believe it was a USDA publication about class and such, in putting classes together, said your club ought to come up with a one-page information sheet to hand out to your members. So they were really putting it on the clubs to come up with your own information sheet to pass out to your dancers and give them the information they need to talk to their friends about square dancing. Many of our club members still think of square dancing as, the thing you do on the first and third Friday night up at the local VFW hall. I mean, some of those people have never been out to a national convention. They've never been to a state convention. They've never seen or heard anything about the history of dancing. Many of our primary recruiters or our club members don't get the local dance publication. They don't get the national dance publication, so they don't have a perspective of what this activity is all about. Sometimes callers will include that information in their classes and in their new dancer program, but many of them don't. And so if those dancers, our primary recruiters, don't have that information, they don't have that ammunition, they can't become very good recruiters. We hand them a thing of flyers and say, well, pick up about 5 or 10 of those flyers and post them at work, or post them up at your dentist's office, or whatever. Once again, if those flyers don't have the right message and they aren't targeted to the audience, we're not very effective in recruiting, are we? And so in my handout, just a couple messages that this is not, in fact, one of those information pieces, but I feel like we need to go along that path and create an information piece or a recruiting package so that each one of our dancers, who are our club members, can become effective recruiters in their own right. Now, there's always been people in our groups that have been much more effective. How many of you have 1 or 2 people in your clubs, they bring all your new dancers in? I mean, they're hot on it, they have the excitement level, they have everything they need to be recruiters. We ought to be rewarding these people. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on as we go along. But basically what I'm talking about is that the word-of-mouth communication is effective when someone can paint a picture about what dancing's all about. And I think Mike showed that in his ads. If you could have a new dancer, and many times the enthusiasm of the new dancer to walk out and recruit somebody else is the biggest thing going, because they're talking about how we all get together and it's so much fun, and boy, there's a lot of energy in the air, and they're just painting this picture of, we go out there and there's some great music, and it's neat because 8 people are kind of working together. It's like a team sport, and they're describing this visual picture to the person that they're talking to about square dancing. And if we can create that in the minds of the person that we're talking to, our potential recruit, we got a much better chance of getting our message across. The other thing is about making our activity special. What's special about your activity or your club dances, or what's special about square dancing? Does anybody know? I mean, a couple of us know that there were square dancing in the movies. There's been some great movies with Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor, and James Dean in Giant. There was square dancing in that particular movie. There's also square dancing scenes in things like Duel in the Sun with Spencer Tracy and Jennifer Jones. I think more recently we had Ernie Kinney, who at the time was our chairman, I believe, was in Son-in-Law with Pauly Shore, which was kind of an unusual movie. But the bottom line is that square dance is in movies. We've had some interesting dance settings also. I had a most unusual experience in 1976 when we actually went and did a square dance demo in the home of Zubin Mehta, who at the time was the head of the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra. Now, here are people that play gorgeous I mean, these guys work together as a team all the time to make their sound for this Philharmonic Orchestra. And yet most of these people, and in their culture, do not touch other people. I mean, they bow and they're very polite and they work together as a team, but they've never touched each other on a dance floor. We got these people out on a dance floor, and we had a live band. We had a fiddler, we had a bass player, we had a banjo player, we had a guitar player, and these guys are just all playing. And they're feeling kind of sheepish because they're playing to some amazing musicians out there. But we were having a great time. Everybody was working together. It was just a magical afternoon. And it happened to be on the same day that Zubin Mehta got his citizenship to the United States. And so it was really a kick. And a lot of these musicians were foreign musicians, but it was just an incredible experience. The energy in the air and literally these people touching each other was just a brand new experience for them. I think sometimes the touching part of it is a hard thing to pass on. I personally find that when you get people together on the first night, and if all your angels are yellow rocking everybody, some of these people are like, woo, you know. I don't teach swing until about the 5th lesson. It's one of my favorite figures, but I don't teach it because I know that some people get in there and it's a little bit too close. It's a little bit too early for them. I mean, they think this of us as kind of a cult or some kind of religion or something, and So I think you gotta back off. I had an interesting experience a couple years back where I had a caller fill in for me one night early on in my class, and he taught him yellow rock and orange rock and red rock, and I lost half my class. and it really said to me, that's probably a thing we could reserve for later on down the line. So consequently, I think we can't come across too wild and crazy, but we'll get a mic to you in just a minute. So the thing is create something special about this activity. Talk about, maybe there's some special event in your town that happens every year. The state fair, and you guys always dance at the state fair. You get so much participation. It's so much fun, and you're right next to the booth where they sell chili or whatever it is that's special about it in your particular area. Yes, got a question?
Yes. John Sweeney, Pennsylvania. I appreciate all the ideas that you've got here, and I think that they all have merit. But I think that what we need here at the grassroots level of square dance callers is the how-to. I understand you're saying that we can teach our dancers how to go out and get new people to come in. That possibly the target market is 55 and older, but we don't know that for sure. How do we need you guys to tell us, to come up with some written document to say, here's how you need to analyze your area, and if you find these results, then this is what we recommend you do. Otherwise, we're just still here grabbing at straws.
I think the bottom line is we need professional people to market our activity. We have for a long time guessed at some of this stuff. And that's one of the things behind the Phoenix Plan, is it's a long-range marketing project. We need the funds to put in together to hire professional people and public relations people to, and Jim can kind of go into this a little bit further. But the bottom line is I still think we have a lot of stuff out there that we use for recruiting that doesn't really work effectively. We need professional help. We're not, I don't know that we have enough talent amongst our whole group of dancers that we can help to market our. So going back to where we have to use what we've got right now until we get the funds, until we can hire the professional help to market this activity the way it needs to be marketed. Because even if they hear ads on the television or the radio, they're still going to need that one-on-one contact. They're still going to need to actually have the vehicle to be able to get in here.
Well, part of what you're saying there is, for example, the radio idea. How do you pick the right radio station? How do you know? You don't know. I know that because I do that, but I'm not in a situation. I don't think the task today is for me to put how you do that on tape. But you would, if you would identify, for example, if we decide that the age group, Jim, what do you think the right age group is? Something like 45 to 55. 35, 55. I'll tell you what, radio stations at least are always 25, 54, 35, 64. If you know the age group, you get on, and assuming that you have the budget, because there's a whole lot to buying radio the right way as well. I just talked to some people at lunch that got a spot at 3 o'clock in the morning. That doesn't do any good. There's a lot of that. I just can't help everybody. I couldn't tell you how to buy a newspaper. I don't know.
What I hear you saying is, let me just ask the question. Everybody in here a caller or a caller spouse? All right. How many of you think of yourself not just as a caller, but one as a teacher? Would you? Are you comfortable with that role? How many of you are running a club as a caller-run club? Can I see a show of hands on that? Okay. Everyone who didn't put their hands up, can you imagine yourself being a marketer of a club that doesn't know how to do it? Because really that's what I think I hear him addressing. I just want to call. I want this club to hire me, and I want to come in and do my job, right? My job is to entertain and to do all the things that we want to do. Now you're trying to tell me I got to become a promoter, a marketer. And I guess, in my opinion, that at the status we are at now in this activity, you almost all have to become that, whether you have not been a club running a club as a caller-run club or not. You know, twice in the last 6 months, I've sat in on Saturday meetings where clubs who are dying, these are 40 and 50-year-old clubs, and 2 or 3 of the clubs get together. In both cases, a caller who was really just a traveling caller who didn't ever run a club had stepped in as an effort to try to save the potential jobs that these clubs represented for him. It wasn't the role he really wanted. It wasn't the thing he had ever trained for or performed in, but he was becoming a manager of trying to keep this activity alive. And I think what this panel is saying, as I hear them, is that they really are addressing both areas. My impression is that you probably do not run a club as a. You do? Oh, okay. Then these issues...
Quite the contrary.
Yeah.
John Sweeney again from Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Because I do run a club.
Oh, okay.
Right now, it is an advanced level. Actually, it's kind of a workshop. But
Yep.
I want to now go into the basic
Right.
programming. And here's my dilemma. In South Jersey, we've had 3 clubs disappear in the last 6 months.
Right.
I need the tools to prevent the other 2 from going away.
Right.
And since I really have never gone, because in our area most of the clubs have been dancer run, dancer organized. I don't have the skills and tools to really know how to do that, and that's what I need you to teach me how to do.
So you have what I understand, you have 2 clubs left in the area, right? And you have a new dancer program. Both those clubs are running classes. Oh, bottom line is both of those clubs need to be running classes and maybe running them together. You need to have dances at the new dancer level. You need to have dances. Those clubs need to have maybe 4 or 5, 6 or 7 events each year that are either co-sponsored with churches or existing social groups for fun, for fellowship, for raising funds for somebody's. If the Kiwanis are raising funds for the YMCA or something like that, then your club needs to have a one-night event and raise money and have a potluck. And those clubs need to get involved and pull people in on fun night parties, on things like that, where you can recruit from those parties on a one-on-one basis. Those clubs need to have lessons that open up 2 or 3 times a year instead of once a year. And you need to have dances. If your club's dancing at the mainstream level, you need to have some new dancer dances a couple times a month. In other words, if you want something, focus your attention on it. What you're telling me is you want new dancers. And the only way you're going to get that is to have new dancer events, to have events that tie in the community around you and your churches and your existing service groups, to get involved in what they're involved in so that you can benefit in return. I don't think we can sit back as an activity anymore and just say, well, what can I do to just pull these people in? Because unless you provide those events and unless you focus your attention on those events, you're not going to get them. One of the other things that once you get them in the door, how are you going to keep them? You need to get these people involved and make sure your events are fun. Make sure you don't put a tremendous amount of responsibility on these people early on, and make sure you don't weight these people down with the responsibilities of your club. How many of you had an experience where you took your dancers all the way through class or all the way through the program and they graduated, and then immediately your club seized them and made them officers and gave them all this responsibility? I had an experience one night where our association came in and did a graduation, and it was a candlelit thing, and they lit candles, and they darkened the lights, and they talked about club responsibilities, and they talked about the things that in the future you'll be an officer, and I watched my best. I had a group of 4 couples who were fairly young and who were just dynamite. They just had so much energy. They made this class just fun. I saw their faces back there, and they had these big eyes, and they're looking, and they're like, my God, these guys are a cult. You know, they knew they'd got, this was the wrong thing. I never saw that square dancers again. I'm going to call them, they said, well, you know, we decided to go bowling, or, you know, they left. I mean, it was, so the bottom line is let these people have fun. Provide the activities for them. Make it so that they're not overly burdened by the responsibilities. But again, getting back to what you're talking about, focus your attention on the new dancers. If you want something, and I think it goes with anything in life, and I said this in the last session, if you want something, focus your attention on it. Create the opportunities for these people to join. If you're not doing the multi-cycle program, I just think that's the best thing next to sliced bread. It's a lot of work, and some of your people will buck you. They'll say, we never did this way before, and you're going to hear a lot of things. But if you want something, work on creating that. And in the future, we hope with this marketing program that we'll have that information to give you, that we'll have these radio spots. Grand Square Inc.'s got a neat radio spot, and I think it was one Craig sent me last year or so, a neat one. It may not work in your area. I don't know. Part of it is exactly as Mike said. A message may work in one area and may not work in another, in an urban area and maybe not work in a city. So we're not equipped yet to give you those kind of tools and say, you know, this is it. Go to the radio station. Even the CALLERLAB couch potato commercials and things that we had out years ago, in theory, they were great, and they worked in some areas, but some places that went with this videotape about the couch potato, the TV stations, I mean, they liked people sitting on the couch watching TV. Those TV stations weren't going to play a couch potato commercial, but fortunately there were a couple other ones on there that would go in. But again, are you on the right TV stations? Are you targeting your message toward the right people? So that's the critical thing. The last thing I want to say basically about recruiting word of mouth is use promotional gimmicks and use hooks. If you've got great promoters in your class, say the person that brings the most people to our class and signs up for lessons, that you're going to give away a TV or you're going to give away a quilt or whatever, you know, you can work that angle with your own dancers. Or when somebody signs up for lessons, if they're going to sign up, if you have a thing where, say, they sign up for 10 lessons in advance, you know, they get a discount or they get a something or other, I don't know. Use your imagination with things that you can reward people with to make them or provide that incentive for them to recruit. One of the single most important things that we've had in our groups is a simple card like this. It's a business card. It has the listing of our club and our what night our dances, our new dancer dances are on. It says actually square dance classes on this. I'm not a real favorite of that, but it describes the whole situation because we have 3 classes that we start a year. It describes them all. And every dancer, every club member has these cards in their pocket. So when they're talking to people about, I got a whole bunch of them here. When you're talking, and they're actually on the handout, in that 3rd page of the handout, there's a cards that we've used. I think it's front and back sides of cards that we've used, you know, at successive years. Use those. Give your dancers the vehicle that when they're done talking to somebody, they can put something in their hand. It's worth a free lesson, and it gets people in the door. And so if you can give someone that is your primary recruiter a tool to hand out after they've sold this person, then it really helps to bring people in. And I would say probably well over half of our new dancers that come in the very first and the second nights when our classes are open have these cards in their hands. Okay? Any questions? Dill?
Dale Reed, Rockledge, Florida. Mike, where do you give out these cards?
We give them out at club dances and at all our new dancer lessons. And because your new dancers are your primary recruiters, and we start classes 3 times a year, I would say for 4 or 5 weeks before the new class starts, we start handing out. We have flyers and we have these cards that are printed up. And we put them on the door, and I promote them. I say, pick up these cards and stick them in your pocket so when you're talking about dancing, you got something to give out to people. And we'd love to have you bring your friends. We'd love to have, don't forget to remind your friends. We've got a new dancer group starting in September coming up here, and so hand them out. Make sure they get them in their pockets, in their wallets.
Kathy Davenport, California. The cards are really good, better than a flyer. because I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people that you're handed a card at a demo or wherever you are. Usually you throw that on the dresser, and it sits there a while maybe, but it stays. A flyer that you're carrying around in your hand that's a big piece of paper, if you're, say, at the zoo, we do demos at the zoo. Half of those flyers are going to go in the garbage can, if not all over the zoo, which of course the zoo's not going to be too thrilled about. But the cards are more likely to stay in the pocket or go in the wallet. They may end up on the dresser for 6 weeks even, but they're still in their possession, whereas the flyer goes by the wayside. If it even gets home, it goes in the garbage at home, would be more likely. But give them out at demos. Give them to your dancers who are recruiting face-to-face with their friends and their neighbors. We've had a little pocket put on flyers that are posted around town that have a few of those cards in, so that when the people are reading the flyer, they can take a business card with them instead of cutting the phone number off. Well, you've got this little phone number. You have no idea when you get home what that phone number was for. So they could take a card out of that pocket and take it home with them.
I was just going to say, if you're going to do this, think about go back to this, since this is about the words. Go back and look at this as an example. And find out if there's other words that you ought to put on here. Little catchphrases. See the smiles, hear the laughter, see the fun. Little things like that. If you know that that your dancers at my club, my dancers' average age is probably about 65. Okay, if they have these and they're handing them out to all of their friends, they're not handing them out to 30-year-olds. Okay? I think it's probably smart to say good for the body and good for the mind on a card like that. Those kind of words that you can incorporate into these type of vehicles to get the message out.
I should preface, I'm not really sold that this card, the V is a great vehicle. I'm not really sold that the words are absolutely right. I don't think you need to put your caller's name on there. I don't think the new dancers care about the new callers, and they don't know anybody, or they don't care about the callers necessarily. I think some of the insignias and some of the little photos or little things we've got in their drawing are not really great, and we're talking about classes, and so I agree with Mike. You need to have little catchphrases and little things that are simple. Make it simple. There's really too much information on this thing, but the idea is the vehicle behind this thing. Give something out, and if it has, I don't care if it has a, $10 value on it, put a value on there, put a little $10 or something, so that it does have some value, so it's not just tossed away. There's little things you can do, and you ought to tweak them each year and see if it brings in a little bit more and play with it a little bit more. I think you got a great chance with bringing a much better message through this type of vehicle.
Bruce Simpers from Ellicott City, Maryland. In the Baltimore area, the Dancers Associations and the callers have gotten together and done wooden nickels, which they found for throwing out at parades a particular good method because they could not pass out papers. The wooden nickels, and people would put them in their pockets and keep them.
I think they're called round tuits. Round tuits. Yeah, it's an advertising or promotional gimmick, but yeah.
I also had a question in regards, if you have a first nighter, door prizes for the new dancers, does that do anything to get them to come back?
That's a good...
Well, I think I have no problem with giving away door prizes at your dances or at your classes, your parties. I would hate to get in the habit of a door prize being the incentive for returning the next week. I think you set yourself up to be buying a lot of door prizes for a lot of years.
I have my name's Chris Birchfield. If you really want some dancers at your club, we've been doing something at our club. If you really want people to show up for your classes, this is an idea we've been doing for about 2 years, and we've been getting about 3 to 4 squares at our classes. Most of the time is they'll say they'll come, they want to come. If you go by, pick them up 2 hours, hour and a half before, say, let's go eat some dinner, let's go out, go get a steak, take them to dinner, let's go eat some dinner, now let's go dancing afterwards. Maybe afterwards do something socially with them afterwards. But the ticket is, go by, pick them up. You may have a hard time finding the hall. Let me just come by and pick you up, just ride with us. Go eat dinner together, come to it. Guarantee you'll pick up 3 or 4 squares at your class that way. If you have every dancer pick up just one couple.
That's a great point. You know, and I think most of you know that when you can one-on-one not only recruit them, but say, hey, we'll come by and pick you up and do something socially with them. I think that's the point that Chris is talking about. Another thing that we've seen used is there's actually a little gimmick thing like the round tour. It's $1 million bill. You know, and it has information on one side of it. You can do something like this. There's a lot of promotional things. I think we all get little catalogs in the mail that have these little promotional gimmicks and items that your club can consider. So think about that.
Yeah, Lanny Weekland, Omaha, Nebraska. One thing that I've heard, and you've probably all heard this too, and it's a great advertising gimmick. Do not be afraid to go to the store in your square dance outfit or your clothes. My wife and I do all of our shopping after a dance at our local market. And people see my wife's square dance jacket. And they, oh, you square dance. Where can we learn to do this? We give out a business card. Don't be afraid that you're a square dancer. That's what I kind of see in our activity. Some people, oh, I'm a square dancer, and they kind of just back away. Be proud you're a square dancer.
I just, in one thought along this card thing, I just picked up, and I've got them putting me one together now, at another conference in Chicago last week, a small CD. And the guy's got his whole pitch with music and everything right on it. And it's also a card on the outside. It's printed, it's his personal card. And wouldn't it be nice to have a personal CD square dance card in which you just said entertainment, see inside, and you had part of this radio pitch you're talking about, maybe a little square dance music with the kind of stuff you wanted, the kind of image you were trying to see. And people, particularly the boomers on down, you know, CDs is a way of life. They stick them in every day. Boom, 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 boom. And that's not going to get thrown away. It's going to get used very much so. It's just I'm getting Mike doesn't know this yet. I'm getting him to help me put together one for my own self, just as a calling card. So it was a nice gimmick, I thought.
Les Greenwood from Park Hill, Ontario, Canada. One of the things that we find about flyers, putting out flyers that was mentioned before, is that people come along and they pick up every flyer on the table and take it home because they didn't bring their reading glasses. And this is an area that we're targeting is people who are now running into a little bit of failing eyesight. They take it home, they read what interests them, try to keep the others, then they come back next week and I wonder if there's anything new and pick them all up again. And away they go. I like the idea of the card. I think that's an excellent idea. They will stick it in their pocket, and it's not likely to be thrown out. But we do a lot of traveling, and this is what we find with our putting out our brochures for traveling. They gather them up. We go through hundreds of them, thousands of them, to get 45 people. Yeah.
You know, I have a comment about demos, and just because I have a real thing about demos, and I know a lot of you. How many of you do demos? A lot of you do demos. I know that sometimes when we go out and do demos, and the group is all dressed up and they look great in their square dance outfits and such, we have a hard time when it comes time to get our group out into the audience to get people to join us. We have a hard time getting those people to join us. They're reluctant. I mean, these people look good in their outfits, and they're twirling and spinning around. They look professional. And so, consequently, in order to make our demos a little bit more successful, we now have some of our club members come in regular clothes, and they dance in regular clothes. We want, actually, these dancers to see our members, some of them in square dance outfits. We want to see some of them in just something that these people that we want to recruit actually would have in their closet, whether it be a long dress, whether it be something that they might wear to work, a business dress, something that they would already have in their closet so that they could go and put that on and come to lessons or come to our new dancer dances. The other thing is we put people in the audience that look like they're in the audience. Shills, if you want to call them. I don't care. But the bottom, I was getting tired as a caller of trying to get others, come on and join us. And no, we don't know. Nobody join. When 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of your club members are dressed up in cutoffs like they're at the mall or like they're at the state fair, and they volunteered to step in and join these people that are asking them to dance, your other club members, all of a sudden, those people out there that you'd like to join you are a lot less reluctant to join you because other people are joining you. So, yes, there's shills. Is it sneaky? Yeah, it's sneaky. But the bottom... It's a marketing technique. Thank you, Mike. It is not sneaky. It's a marketing. The bottom line is that when you square them up to circle left and circle right and play around with these people the first time to show them what fun it is, they're going to be in there. They're going to join you, and so it's made our demos a lot more effective. The other thing is be giving something away. Have a reason, a raffle, a something or other, so that these people are signing up and have their name and address. You should never do a demo and not come away with names and addresses of prospective recruits. If you're giving something away or you're doing something, you're raffling something off, I don't care what it is, whether it's free lessons, which I'm not sure if that's the best thing, but something they want, a boom box, a box set CD, something or other, whatever it is, if you're raffling something off, then you can have them sign up. They don't have to be present, they're coming. You end up walking away with a list of names of people that saw you at the mall or wherever your demonstration was, and you've got a vehicle to recruit these people by phone calls. By the way, we're glad you stopped by and saw our group dancing, and sorry you didn't win the color television set we were raffling off, but we just wanted to thank you for coming out and remind you that we've got a new program of dancers coming. We'd love to have you guys come. By the way, we're going to have a potluck dinner on such and such a night, and love to, and make it an event and make it something special. Invite them personally. It's just another marketing tool. Okay.
Say something, Chris, again. I notice me and Kim, we're always hungry for information. We're always looking for stuff. I will say this last night, and I think most of you agree. Last night, getting to the clothes thing. Last night when we danced over there last night, I saw a smile on everybody's face. Everybody had a good time. And I don't think anybody was concerned with what they had on. I think that's just a real good point to make. Just like you say with the square dance clothes. It don't matter what you're wearing. We had a good time. We was all dressed nice, We didn't have square dance clothes on, but we had a good time. That was the point. That's all I was getting at about the clothes.
I think the other thing is when your dancers are out there dancing in a demo, make sure they're smiling. Make sure they're having fun. I mean, kidding around a little bit and interacting with each other and making eye contact and having fun. If they're just trying to make sure they don't goof up and all that, come on. That's not fun. It's just, it looks too professional. Make sure your dancers, when they're doing their demo, are having a good time and interacting with each other. Doc?
Doc Terrell from Vermont. How many of you here, when you go home, are going to write a short article to put into your local newspaper? The fact that you were here, that you were with a whole group of callers. You have a great advertising means of getting to people. Let them know what you are doing. And by putting enough of these notices in the paper. What are your club doing? Is it doing something special? Is it supporting something special? Get it in the paper. Get it on the radio.
Toward that end, if you're interested, we could have a prototype letter as a press release letter. All you do is fill in the name and blank on the foundation website within the next week if you'd like that available. Because we can slant it in such a way to get the point that this square dancing is a whole new ballgame. It's something like dancing ain't square anymore, or something like that, where you get the same time you're notifying your little community in the weekly that you went to this place, but also along with that is the message that this is really back on its way up in a whole different format. So if you want that, I will make sure that gets done personally, all right? If that has value to it, then you just fill in your name and the place, and that's about it. Second, the same attitude about words in how, again, that first day, we just left a seminar this morning where it was close the deal on the first night. How do you get them there? And this is something of the same thing. And you've got to, you look at the people who are successfully doing that, like Zydeco dance, which is going very big right now in our country anyway. Western swing, both Eastern and West. Swing dance, both Eastern and Western, which has just had huge resurgence. And these people never ever give the impression that this is about a series of lessons. It's always, we're having a party. If you want to learn how to do it, come down a half hour early. Lessons at 7:30, dance at 8, or party at 8. And people go in there not knowing anything about Western swing or Eastern swing or Zydeco, and in a half hour, they think they're dancers. And then they have a ball for the next 2 hours. Now, they're not dancers, because I've asked all of these people who run these groups, how long does it take to become a good swing dancer? And you know what the answer is. About a year, or if you want to be really good, it's going to take you about 3 to 5 years. It takes longer to be a swing dancer than it does to be a good square dancer, but that's not the impression in that first half hour. Now, we can't do the same thing. I'm not suggesting we do, but you certainly can minimize the degree in which you are expecting this to be an ongoing, obligatory thing to come back and take more lessons. You understand what I'm saying? Because that's, again, the mindset of this boomer generation. It's not a con job, but it is, as we talked about the shill arrangement. It's a way of presenting it in a new way. It's a way of getting their attention and not having them leave before they have a chance to do what? Experience the message and the content, which is what Mike was talking about. It's only message and content. The form doesn't matter. It may matter to you and your club, and that's fine if the dress action is there. In my own market research, I personally do not believe that people do not go to and become members of square dancers because of the dress. I don't think that's it at all. Nor do I really believe that people leave because of the dress. But if it is perceived as a problem in the mind, if they think it's a reason, take away the perception, the option of the perception. And Mike does this beautifully in his locations because no one makes that an issue doing those classes. I did a personal market study on a year and a half, 2 years of his classes, and he cycles them every 17 weeks. And one third of all the new women, and the women who started in as new dancers, 1/3 of them, absolutely, I would never wear that outfit. I wouldn't wear that outfit if you gave it to me. I wouldn't be caught dead in an outfit. They had this, I turned around and resurveyed them when they graduated, 34 weeks later, exactly the same attitude. But 85% of that same group of 1/3 within a year had in fact bought the club dance for dances. But it was a voluntary thing because they liked to dress up. But there was never a sense of pressure about it, so it wasn't an issue. The dress wasn't an issue. And as we move through this cycle, we probably will have less dress requirements as we go along in the next 5 to 10 year period. But it isn't really the reason people don't come. When I did my original survey, every woman I talked to, first 100 women, the first thing they said to me, these were non-dancers, are they still wearing those cotton-picking, short-waisted outfits? Well, I believe the first 5 or 6 of them that was really the reason and not a red herring. But then I started hitting women who I could just look and see they'd look real good in a short-waisted outfit. And when they said that, I knew that wasn't the real reason. But it was a perceptional reason. It's easy for a non-dancing woman to say that without thinking about the real reasons, the image problems and all the rest. So we do have an obligation to take away that option, but don't let this dress thing be a reason for you to hang up and have fights and everything else. You cannot believe the number of people in these focus groups who we found had dropped out of square dancing. We had 3 or 4, which is a significant number when you take 11 people that represent the whole country, because these people are selected by an outside media group and they're perfectly balanced. When you have 1 or 2 within a group that says to you, well, we dropped out of square dancing because the club got in this big fight and split right down the middle on dress, that's a real shame because they lost a good member, and that represented, percentage-wise, a whole bunch of people out there. So don't let those issues become the thing, but think about it in terms of form so that you find a way to take away that option. I didn't mean to. I just thought that was.
Jim, what website will that be on? The address of the website, you'll post that.
Foundation. The foundation website. That's where that's CALLERLAB Foundation for Preservation and Promotion. That, or I can do that on Bill Hyman's if Dosai Do. He's offered that also. Yeah. So either way you want it, it'll probably be on a couple of websites. But I'd like to get it specifically. It really should go with the Caller Foundation website, if that's okay with you. Yeah. You all know that we now have a website. What is the website address? I don't know.
CALLERLAB's is www.callerlab.org. And I'm sure there's a link with the foundation website right there. Yeah. So, yes, do www.callerlab.org. Thank you, Ed.
Okay, Ed Jouer from Rhode Island. I'll get to my comments if I don't mind. We're going to repost on our website, www.squaredance.ws, articles we've had by Bernie Coulter's regarding marketing, how to contact, what you should say, what you don't say. For club members also, we've had 2 or 3 different articles on here, and if you don't know Bernie, Bernie's an excellent person in that respect. We'll get those back up probably within about 10 to 12 days. You mentioned smiling at the demos. First of all, demos, the only time I've seen really successful demos, you have to pick the right people from the club to take to the demo. You cannot take everybody in the club. Okay? And the caller has to call simple material so the people will smile. The people who don't know the square dancing wouldn't know a teacup chain from a left Allen man. And if you have to keep the dancers thinking, they're not going to smile.
Okay.
So we have to look at how we handle ourselves when we go out.
Yeah, there's a gentleman here. I was hoping he might be here. We are really appreciative. Runs a club down in San Diego, and he brought this issue up at another seminar this morning. And he actually prepares a demo group. Period, and they're the right age, and I guess they're whatever he deems to be the valuable ingredients for a demo team. He has a demo team, and they prepare for that, and that's the group, the demos, not just people that show up. And I know that's not always easy to do, and I know that may seem to be exclusatory, or you're excluding people, but this is it's a prop, and so not everybody wants to or is correct for a prop. That's all. It's no different than doing another setting. Just like the person you asked to be out in the audience may not particularly want to do that role, but this is a role they play. We have to again start to show a different face on this activity. It isn't that we want to change it. The first, I think, Doc and his wife Vega was the first people that grabbed a hold of me right after I made this presentation 3 years ago. Well, are you going to get rid of tradition and history? Of course not. Believe me, sponsors are more appreciative of the value of good historical tradition than you are. They're not going to let us get rid of that. We're simply saying we want to use this in new ways that these people are more familiar with and find more attractive. But for goodness sakes, no. One of the most valuable assets we have is that we've been around for 250 years, and we perfectly parallel the history of this country. That is an asset. That is an experience. That's why there's a lady I met in this group that makes a living going around to these reenactments and living history, and all she does is prepare old square dance routines and contra dances and things like that, and she gets called all over the country, and she comes in and prepares those. That's another way to experience square dancing, through historical reenactments. It's just one more valuable face that you put on this activity, along with the physical fitness face. That's what we have to be prepared to do. We have to be prepared to present this idea, maintaining all of its content and value in new forms, and forms that this group of people are familiar with. It takes creativity, but it doesn't take any loss of the real value, because if you lose the value, you lose the fun, and nobody wants that. You wouldn't have any product that had any value.
Anna Dixon, Massachusetts. I'd like to backtrack to your comment on demos and how people disperse the minute you say, come and join this fun. And I'd like to pass on a wonderful technique that the CALLERLAB caller, Art Anthony, uses at the Eastern States Exposition in West Springfield, Mass. He has them square up, and he said, all right, bow to your partner, which they do, and he says, now look at your partner, and they all do. And he said, you don't like what you see? Then go out there and get somebody. And, of course, the audience outside is laughing so much that he said that to these people, they forget to disperse. And every single time it works. He gets 2 extra squares. So try it sometime. Just say to your dancers, you don't like what you're looking at? Go find something better.
Sorry, I want to sell one more thing that's in line with what she's talking about. We have a thing called Winning Ways, which we just initiated, and we'll also have that on Do and probably on the CALLERLAB website. And it's exactly this. I've heard over the last year and a half so many wonderful stories, and yet I go to another place and nobody's saying, geez, we don't know how to do this. What demos that don't work. And I watched it last year not work at the Los Angeles State Fair, biggest fair in the United States, and they had these wonderful demos, and nobody went out in the audience. There was no interaction between them, and it's just a waste of effort and waste of time. And yet this Winning Ways idea is to take these examples, make them available in a format, in a condensed way that everyone can use them and have access to them. And the success of this concept, the Winning Ways concept, is that you've got to be willing to share it. So this website will ask for examples. Now, all of these examples are not going to fit your club. Maybe 10% of them will. But if we have enough people sharing, right now there's probably 20, we have the image that nothing's working in square dance. We've tried everything, and everybody else has tried everything, and it's going down the tubes. That isn't true. There are areas of growth in square dancing right now. There are areas where people are successful. There are other areas where they've found ways to hold their own. Sure, there are other areas where we're losing 10, 15% a year. But we need to have this exchange place, this point of where I can tell you what works for me. And that's what Winning Ways is. So it'll only be successful if you're willing to do what she's done and what some of the other ones have done here, and that's give us these winning ways.
By the way, I do have a handout that has the information that I talked about earlier if you want it. I'm sorry I didn't hand it out earlier. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Curly?
Hi, my name is Everett Curley. You callers, with your new dancers, do you pass out the handbook that I received and my wife received? We started in '96. I think we need to stay in step with time. That book, I don't know when it was last updated. The mainstream and
the Sets and Orders booklet with the. I'm sorry.
It's the one that was printed in '72, I think, or some date. I think we need to change that book. We had a young couple come to our class back in the fall. They're 23 years old, and I think it would be great if you had some folks in there in the photographs wearing normal clothes, so you don't have to look like you got to buy an outfit or a uniform before you can do square dancing. They don't have to have one to go shagging, or they don't have to have a special dress to go line dancing. So I think while we're talking about changing, in that book that's handed out to every new dancer, I think that I've been in contact with, it'd be nice to have that updated. The photographs what I'm talking about. Thanks.
The problem that Everett has just pointed out is a simple one. There is no home office in this activity. There is no central authority. There's no national association that makes these decisions, changes these books. And that's why you people, the reason I stopped the CALLERLAB on my way to dancer organizations 3 years ago was real simple. I don't think this thing can survive without you people taking the leadership role. This activity is very dependent upon a caller. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of dance groups, and done surveys, and they'd rather have a middle average caller live than the best Tony on tape anywhere in the country and in the world. Live calling is really part of this business. It's the only way we can really humanize this activity and really make the joy. Now, because of what's happening, you people are going to have to assume new roles, even those of you who are not running clubs. And just what Everett has pointed out, you're going to have to take the initiative in your group to do that update, to do that facelift, and to do that change, to be creative on how you present it, because there ain't no home office to do it. And it ain't going to happen if you wait. And that's both the blessing and the curse of this activity. It always has been. It's highly independent activity. It's like Baptist churches, for goodness sakes. You're on your own. And so when he says that, you can't wait for someone to change the pictures. You go to your own letter, your own house organ or your own newsletter or whatever it is you do, and you update that. And if the club isn't doing it, who is your primary employer, then you start to suggest they do, or you do it for them. There really isn't anybody else to do it. We are the home office for each one of us.
I had a comment and then a question. My name is Meg Ferguson from Saratoga, California, Northern California. And back to the business cards, we put a map on the back of our business card in addition to the information about the class on the front, or during the rest of the year we have just generic information. And also on the flyers, it was USDA or Legacy, I'm not sure which. We make the flyer with all the information at the top of the page, and then we put 4 or 5 of these business cards with the map on the back. You know, it's just the paper stock from the flyer. And people can tear off that, and they've got all the information they need from the bottom of that flyer. And that works well. The other question I had was, somewhere on the internet, there's a person in our club who likes to pass out a flyer that says, Square Dance can add 10 years to your life. And it kind of bothers me because I have no idea where this information came from. She said she got it off the internet. I did see at another club that somebody had gotten it from a newsletter in Florida, but I'd still like to know the authority for this, and I was wondering if anybody had any idea where this article came from.
I don't know for sure. I know in Minnesota, you know? Okay. I know, am I close? I know in Minnesota the American Heart Association has cooperated with the state of Minnesota and their dancer organization. They put out some publications that are actually, I think they've co-opted the production of the publication, and it's been a while since I've seen it, but it could have come from there, but I think Mr. Hensley knows exactly, so I'll give it to him.
Well, I tell you, you're a lady after my own heart. I kept hearing this thing. I kept trying to track it down. There was a report done about, back in the 60s by the Mayo Clinic, of all people, who suggested, now I have not been able to get Mayo to release me the study in a format that I can use authoritatively. And so I choose not to do that. But what we are in the process of doing with the University of Texas' Southwest Research Hospital is we're very close to getting them to do a study for us. Because one thing about saying 10 years, they'll say, well, that's just exercise, right? Yeah. So somebody could say, well, any good exercise, a person exercises 2 hours twice a week, for goodness sake, they're going to live 10 years. And you can't argue with them, I don't think, even with this particular study that Mayo did. But what I want to do is pin it down a lot better. Not only is it the cardiovascular, the smooth movement, all of these things from an aerobic standpoint, but there's also now a whole emphasis on mental acuity, which is very critical to, believe it or not, to aging, because it's, after all, a numbers game. So if too many people go off without good mental acuity, we lose them through Alzheimer or whatever it happens to be. So mental acuity really is a factor. And then, of course, the new factor, which is called social capital, which we just now are beginning to discover. And this is really critically important. When I sit next to someone who's a baby boomer on an airplane, immediately we start talking about this, right? You got to know that. And by the time, within 15 minutes, they've told me he's not doing anything in the social life. He's not doing anything in his church life other than maybe an hour on Sunday morning. And he's not doing anything in civic life. So he doesn't have this connection. And I say to him, and I don't say this lightly because there are studies now that support this completely. I say, well, you know, of course, you might as well be smoking a pack of cigarettes a day because it has the same effect on your longevity, on the way you run your job, the way you run your business, if you're not doing one of these things. If you're not active in a square dance, or you're not really involved with your church, or you're not down there volunteering at the Civic Center with as running a campaign or something. And he looks at me and says, are you serious? I said, absolutely. Because we now know that along with, you make an investment when you go to school and do your training in educational capital. You make an investment in the financial capital when you invest in businesses or whatever it happens to be. And we've always known that there's been a thing called social capital. That is how you interact socially with the world. We've always known that, but we now, only within the last 2 or 3 years, have pinned down and know that how you invest in social capital is just as critical to your health as any other aspect of your life. We seem to be hardwired to be a connected species. And when I connected, I mean really involved. And what we're saying is that if you're not involved in a real connected way, other than in your job or other than in your family, if there isn't that third vehicle out there, then you're going to not have the same life expectancy. And this is a fact. We can now literally say this to people. And as this kind of data becomes well known, and as all of the services and products try to get their name associated with a good social investment, a place for social capital investment, then this is going to become more popular. It's just a short period of time to where these 45-year-olds, when they get finished with their physical exam, the doctor's going to say, Bob, what else do you do in your life? You need to get some involvement. What the hell are you talking about? Well, we need to, the AMA Journal just did a study, and what are you doing? You get involved. And so there'll be people now pushing these people. And literally, I said this when I first got involved, this is the most politically correct, best, healthiest social activity in the world today, because you get all three areas covered, all critical areas. And now we know that the social interaction area is just as critical, because it is in fact an investment that you make in social capital. So we have that third link now that can make us a critical product, a good product, the best product. And that's all we have to do, is find a way again to translate this into a form that these people don't mind seeing. The second problem comes a little later, and that is once you get them in the door and they've got an image of why they come in that door, then that image that they experience inside that club can't be too far away from the image that we got them in the door with. And that's a different issue.
Joan Hogan from Gainesville, Florida. I just had a couple of things I wanted to share along that way. No, we're not related, are we, Mike? I've had several people come up to me and ask me about the little thing that they've heard or seen somewhere as going to a square dance is equal to 5 miles or 10 miles or whatever a night. And I don't know where that ever came from or what the real length was for a dance. However, I tried it, measured it several times with a petameter. So just for your information, a tip was equal to, and I did it several times, and it was like 1/10 of a mile, 2/10 of a mile, which is 0.2, or 2.5. So you can kind of put that, depending on how long the guys run their records. So, if it's a 12-minute tip or whatever, it's equal to 2/10 of a mile. So then that's times ever how long the dance is. So that would be how many miles it would be equal to. Another thing I wanted to share was that we have a medical center in our town, and I've been involved in several of their studies. And just as a matter of information, the walking committee or the walking program has square dancing as one of the recommended activities for people to do. And there are several of these medical things that are really promoting square dancing. And if we just had some way to get to some of those people to get it, this would be great. To put out some literature at the hospitals.
That's actually a great idea. It's something I meant to mention earlier. The idea of this pamphlet, for example, that CALLERLAB put out. Now, maybe you can put your own pamphlet together, whatever you want to. But we look at avenues where we can get these things in the hands of people. Every one of us has a doctor. Okay, and those doctors are going to be talking to a lot of their patients about both physical and mental well-being and the kind of things that they can do to stay in shape. You've bought the time. So if there's a way that you can get these into the medical clinics, I serve on a marketing committee for the local Boy Scouts in the Omaha area, and we're putting these into not physicians' clinics, but pediatric clinics. And the doctors are very, about Boy Scouting, of course, and the benefits and values of that. And it's going fine. There's not very much resistance to it. So if you've got something like this where you're talking about good physical, mental health, okay, get that out there. Also, another target. Today there is a huge growth in the independent living communities. We're talking about, when I say independent, I'm not talking about assisted, I'm talking about independent. I'm talking about people who are still very physically active, probably very prime to become involved in our activities. You can probably get these kind of things into those centers very easily. You can go into those centers and do demonstration dances very easily, and a lot of these people are still very physically and mentally capable of getting out and going to your dances, and they're looking for an outlet. It's a great place.
One more last thing is we actually have a class that is sponsored by Senior Friends. I don't know if any of y'all have ever heard of Senior Friends, but one of the hospitals in Ocala, and we've been doing this for like 3 years now. They get the people. They bring them. I mean, they sign them up if there are other little organizations, and then they just show up at the dance. So we're doing real good in that area.
Just addressing what you were talking about in terms of miles, I borrowed a couple pedometers from a neighbor of mine, and had one dancer at a dance who enjoys the rounds and every tip, had them dance every round and every tip in a 3-hour dance, and it was just short of 6 miles. And the other one that was wearing them didn't do any of the rounds, and they were just short of 5 in a 3-hour dance. So I imagine it may vary a little bit, but that's just about where you're going in a 3-hour dance. So it's kind of interesting, and I would invite that anybody has neighbors that run, or cousins or whoever, or if you run yourself or you have a pedometer, they're not very expensive, and you can pick one up at a Big Five or some kind of sporting goods store. It's kind of interesting, just for a piece of information. $10. Also, the other thing that Lanny, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say that Lanny Weekland, Omaha, Nebraska. Mike and I have a very unique couple in our area. They've been dancing for almost 50 years. She can no longer dance. He still dances. He had a stroke about 3 years ago. The doctor told him he had to walk 10 miles a week. She said, he'll never walk 10 miles a week. Can he square dance 3 times a week? The doctor says, absolutely. So there's your medical is behind this. And he dances 3 times a week and doesn't stop. He dances every tip.
Absolutely. And and getting this information or these pamphlets with your club and your information on the back of them into your cardiologist or your internist or whatever, make sure you make some contacts. I'm sure there's someone in your club who's had an experience with a cardiologist, and make sure you get that information in there.
I bet you could even get these in a dentist.
In a dentist's office. They go in a perfect. No problems at all. Right next to the sugarless gum, all right? You just put it right there, okay? The other thing is, if you haven't tapped into homeschooling markets, please. Homeschooling is huge. These kids need a recreational requirements. We have clubs now that are booming because they're not only getting the kids in their class, fulfilling their educational requirement in homeschooling, but these kids are bringing their parents. And so, yeah, you have a class that's got teenagers getting their phys ed requirement, but you also have those kids' parents. So look into the homeschooling market or the homeschooling associations in your communities. This is another source to tap. Jim, you want to wrap them up?
No, go ahead.
We'd like to thank you for coming out. We got a coffee break coming up in here. Good luck, and stay with it, okay? Very good. Thank you.